Welcome to The Way the World Works, where the trusted team behind the Tuttle Twins books tackles current events, hot topics, and fun ideas to help your family find clarity in a world full of confusion.
Hi, Katie.
Hey, Brittany.
So, unfortunately, everyone is going to go through difficult times in their life at some point. It's unavoidable. You'll hear people say, "Such is life." That is one area where you'd say that it's just what happens. And you can't always be prepared for the specific things that might happen to you. That's again just life. But today, I want to talk about some things you can do to cope with hard times, whatever those hard times may be. And it could be anything. It could be the death of a loved one. It could be a parent losing a job. It could be, parents getting divorced or a family member or a friend getting sick or even moving to a new town. That was really hard for me when I was in junior high when my family moved from Southern California to in the middle of nowhere, Texas. That was very hard for me. So these are just some situations that could be hard, but there are numerous other ones. And those hard things can make you stronger if you let them, but I wanna talk about today some ways to get through those difficult times, and they're not gonna be things like how to solve the problem because there are some problems you can't solve.
Yeah,
If
you just
somebody
have to yeah,
yeah,
you have to just go
exactly.
through them. Yeah.
You have to go through them. The only way out is through or some things, but even if it's, let's say, moving, there was nothing I could do as a 12-year-old to stop us from moving. There was nothing I could do when my brother and my nephew had cancer. There's nothing I personally could do to change that. So it's tricky, but that part of life is also part of, the way the world works is understanding what you have control over and what you don't. And like I said, bad things are going to happen. I know that sounds like a downer, but I wish
Yeah.
so much that when I was a kid, someone taught me how to cope or what to
Mm.
do in these situations because no one ever taught me that. And so when things would go wrong, I would kind of emotionally unravel as a small kid and then as a young adult because I just didn't know how to get through things and come out stronger. That's why I've had so many episodes where I talk about like Jordan Peterson and there's the Tuttle Twins 12 Rules boot camp that is based off his book because that's where I learned a lot of just good strategies. That's not the only place, but it was really good for me. So I want to go through some just suggestions I have and Katie, feel free to jump in whenever you have an idea. But the first thing, and I actually learned this as a teacher, that is to stick to your normal routines and schedule. And what I mean by that is when we had students that we knew were going through a hard time, sometimes it was like parents getting divorced, I think we have a tendency to want to treat them differently and maybe let them get away with things more. Or I hate saying it that way because I don't want it to seem like I was out to punish or anything. I wasn't. But to give them special treatment because they're going through a difficult time. And one thing we talked about in our teacher training is that really doesn't serve them at all. It doesn't give them any benefit.
Mhm.
So you need to stick to your routines, because that consistency is sometimes the only thing that can keep you grounded when everything else around you is unpredictable and hard. And I know that as an adult, doing that with my just daily routines, like I get up and, I've been bad at this lately, but like meditating every morning just for a little bit and journaling and doing these things I do every day. When I don't do those, or if I'm going through a hard time and I decide to skip a day of meditation or journaling, it doesn't serve me at all, right? It actually hurts me. It goes to my detriment because I'm stopping those things that keep me grounded. I don't know if you have any thoughts in there, Katie. You don't have to. I just want to make sure I'm throwing it to you in case you have anything to add.
Yeah, I agree. I think that that's a good one, and I think it's really important. And I think you talk about meditating and grounding yourself. I think for other people that can look like praying or
Oh, yes.
religion. Whatever it is that keeps you um, kind of focused on the fact that there's a bigger world out there. Today might be a bad day, but it's not a bad life. So you just have to I think of it as very much like kind of just buckling down. I know that's not very warm and fuzzy feeling, but it's very sometimes you just have to tuck your head and drop your shoulder and just like trudge through the hard thing. And part of that is definitely keep doing the thing that you do every day. That's very much the kind of one foot in front of the other way of getting through problems. So yeah, I totally agree with you there.
I'm glad you said that because one of the things I think is really hard about watching the younger generations is the victim mentality and the
Yes.
idea that life shouldn't be hard ever and that it should
Mhm.
always be easy and not triggering. And I'm saying that in scare quotes because life is triggering. All life is full of these
Right.
triggering experiences, and you don't get through things unless you actually you go through those
Get
triggers. Some
through
of them
them.
you gotta actually stand there and face it. I loved this part of one of the Batman movies where Batman is scared of bats, and he, like,
Mhm.
falls in a bat cave, but it's, like, this moment where he just sits and lets the bats fly around. I'm not telling you to go in a bat cave and let bats fly around you, but it was a symbol, right, for that was, like, a trigger for him that scared him, but he sat there and he let the thing happen and he got braver and he got stronger. And obviously, some triggers are worse than others, and so that shouldn't be something that if it's too hard for you, don't see that. But for a lot of things, it's we should do hard things. We should challenge ourselves to do hard things. That's how we get better and get tougher at life. So I'm glad you brought that up. Another thing is to find positive ways to express your emotions, and I think that can happen through art, whether you draw, whether for me, I do comedy. Comedy is very healing for me if I'm going through a hard time. So like there's things like that. Dance is really good, journaling, and even just talking to somebody and sitting and having someone trusted that you can talk to about these things. Because one thing is, while we don't want to feel like victims, you also that doesn't mean that you should just keep your emotions in.
Mhm.
It's always important to express those emotions. Now, I also think, as with everything, sometimes you can dwell on them too much and where you're only
Mhm.
focusing on the problem. So I think there's definitely a fine line between venting and getting sharing your feelings, but not letting those feelings become everything, if that makes
Well, have you
sense.
ever noticed that it seems like because, first of all, I guess another thing to think about is that, no one is having a blissful life. Like, it's really
Mhm.
again, it's really easy to compare your life with others and see only snippets of another person's life or the things that they choose to show and think, "Man, I have it so much harder than them." And I've noticed in my life that the people who don't talk about their problems all the time. Like, yes, they'll talk when something is wrong and they'll say, like, oh, this is what's bothering me. But people who don't always talk about their problems, always talk about the things that are bothering them, they seem to be a lot happier. And the people
Mhm.
who are always talking about, their struggles, the things that are unfair, the things that are hard, they seem to spiral and always be unhappy. And so I
And
think
I
that
feel
there
like
is a
bad things always seem to happen to them too.
Yeah, I know, it's like they speak it into existence or something, but, I mean, some people maybe think it attracts negative energy, I don't know, but there is something real to that, like, the things that we say, the words that we put out into the world, the way that we, view our lives and talk about our lives, I think has a tremendous amount of power over the quality of our lives. So while it is fine and important to be able to share with your close friends or your loved ones the things that are hard for you, I've noticed that the people who talk the least about the things that are hard for them are the happiest and more well adjusted people. So I think
Exactly. I
that's
think it's
that's
good
important.
to express how you feel and kind of send it out there, but don't obsess about it, right? Because that's not going to help. And I've teased myself for saying this, but it's something that's really changed my outlook on life. That every morning, the first thing I say when I wake up is today is going to be a good day, or like good things are going to happen to me. Does that mean that good things always happen to me? No, but if I start my day off with a really positive outlook, I notice the good around me more, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. So it's not like it's like some magical spell that's making good things happen to me. No, but it forces me to kind of look at the good. And that actually brings me to another point, which is focus on like things to be grateful for. That is such a big
Mhm.
thing for me to start my day off with writing like 5 things that I'm grateful for, a gratitude journal, because then
Mhm.
that reminds you that even though some things are really bad, there's so many things. And it could be something small. Like sometimes when I can't think of a big thing I'm grateful for, I'm like, oh my goodness, I am under a warm blanket right now. How amazing is
Mhm.
that? Not everyone has that. I have a nice place to live, little things like that we take for granted. So I think
It
that's
makes
really
me think
important.
of, yeah, I agree. And um, there was something we did with our kids when they were little, where we would sit down at the dinner table at night and we would go around the table, and we would do like a best and worst. I've heard other families call it, which I wish I had heard when my kids were little because it's so cute, but they would call it a rose, a bud, and a thorn. And it gave everybody at the table an opportunity to say, here was a win that I had today. Like, here's
Oh, I
the
like
thing that
that.
happened that I love. And that's my rose. And my bud is something that is I'm excited about, something that I'm looking forward to, something that I have hope about. And a thorn is acknowledging, here's this cruddy thing that happened today, or here's this thing that hurt me or upset me. And so it gives us that perspective where it's like, because I think humans maybe just have that tendency to focus on the thorns, especially maybe some people more than others. And so when we have that ability to sit and look at and say, okay, here was this awesome thing that happened today, and you get to relive that for a second.
Yep.
And then you get to talk about something that gives you hope and excitement. And then you get to share the thing that wasn't so great, and it does put it in perspective. It does help you focus on not just reliving the feelings of that disappointing or hurtful thing, and recognizing in that moment that there's actually, there's more that's good than there is that's bad.
Absolutely. And I think another thing that's so important is one, realizing how little you have control over in life, but also recognizing the things you do, which are your attitude and your perspective. And that is so important. And it's kind of what we were saying before is if you choose to see that there is good around you, and that does not mean ignoring very serious, hard things, right? It just means also looking at like, oh, I can control how I act right now. I can control the way I'm choosing to view this situation. And that is so important because that was one of the things I didn't learn until much later on in life because I let the bad thing that was happening become like my identity, become everything.
Hmm.
And I have
Well, and I
no
think
control
that's
and I'm a victim.
Yep, yep, and that's the difference between, I think focusing on, like, having joy and focusing on happiness. Happiness is something that we feel in a moment, and it might be fleeting, and joy is something that I've heard it said, like, joy has very little to do with our circumstances and more to do with the way that we interact with our circumstances, and I think that's so powerful in thinking of it that way, like, you can have a joyful heart, you can have a joyful life, in the face of really terrible things. I think about one of the Tuttle Twins books, the Courageous Heroes, one of the guidebooks. There are so many people in there that exemplify that trait of being able to have joy in spite of like really terrible circumstances. But I think of Corey Ten Boom, and how she was able to be such a loving, caring, and forgiving person in spite of having experienced horrible persecution and disappointment and hardship. And so I think that there is definitely that, you control how you engage with the situations that you're in and how much control you allow them to have over your overall joyful outlook on life.
I think that's perfect. And one thing I want to say before we wrap up here is that I'm not trying to say that this is easy, right? Like, oh, you're going through something really terrible. That's fine. This is going to be so easy if you just do this. It's not. And sometimes it feels like a battle to have to try to do these things every day. Like I've had times where even writing in my gratitude journal felt hard because I was so stressed about the bad things going on in my life, but I had to keep pushing myself through it. And it's like building muscle in a gym. It gets easier and easier the more you do it, but when you don't do it, you just feel worse. So, again,
So
kind
really
of a
quick,
oh, go on. Yes, please.
I just want to add, I have this quote framed in my office, and I just want to like read it really quick because it's so perfect for this topic. It says, anyone who imagines that bliss is normal is going to waste a lot of time running around shouting that he's been robbed. Most putts don't drop, most beef is tough, most children grow up to be just people. Most successful marriages require a high degree of mutual toleration. Most jobs are more often dull than otherwise. Life is like an old time rail journey, delays, sidetracks, smoke, dust, cinders, and jolts, interspersed only occasionally by beautiful vistas and thrilling bursts of speed. And I love that outlook on life and what it should be and what it actually is. It's hard and it's meant to be so that we can grow and so that we can improve and learn, and so that we can help other people after we succeed in coming through really difficult things, we can then turn around and help the next person who's coming through those. So if it was just easy and it was bliss, we wouldn't really get very far.
No, that is like the perfect quote to end on. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And guys, we'll leave it there. And don't forget to, like and subscribe to the podcast and share with your friends. And until next time, we will talk to you soon.
Bye.
You've been listening to The Way the World Works. Make sure your family is subscribed and check out TuttleTwins.com for more awesome content.